Welcome to Voices Amped. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellie Clark.
And I'm Vanessa Becker-Weig, and we are your hosts. Voices Amped is a place for us to share space and lift the voices of artists, activists, community leaders, and organizers, all of whom have inspired us and our work.
For any ampers who aren't familiar with our work, we are Voices Amplified, formerly known as the Girl Project. You can learn more about our arts advocacy work or support us by going to voicesamplified.net. Thanks for listening, and remember, be curious, be courageous,
take up space, and make some noise.
Today on Voices Amped, we share the space with New York City resident and Kentucky native Ellen Hagan. A writer, performer, and educator, Ellen shares about creating a sustainable life as an artist, her work with the DreamYard Project, her go-to recommended reading, and how she navigates raising two radical young daughters. She also shares two poems from her new book of poetry, Blooming Fiascoes, and several short segments from her forthcoming book, Reckless, Glorious Girl, which is available for pre-order now. It is an honor to introduce to you my friend and our collaborator, Ellen Hagan. Welcome and thanks for listening. This is Voices Amped. I'm Ellie Clark.
And I'm Vanessa Becker-Weig, and we are your hosts.
We are so excited to introduce you to Ellen Hagan, a Kentucky native now living in New York City. She's spent most of her adult life in New York City. Ellen, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you.
Me too. I'm so excited to be here with you all.
So I'm going to embarrassingly read your bio here so people can know why you're on our podcast and why you're so badass. Ellen is a writer, performer, and educator. She has collaborated with the Girl Project, Voices Amplified, as a guest artist for the past 8 years. Her writing with the Girl Project participants has been a centerpiece to the Girl Project work and has inspired a plethora of the performance pieces that we've created over the years. Her books include Crowned, Hemisphere, Watch Us Rise, which is a YA collaborative with Renee Watson, and two forthcoming publications, a collection of poetry called Blooming Fiascoes and a middle grade novel called Reckless, Glorious Girl. That's probably the best title ever. Ellen's poems and essays can be found on ESPNW. What is that?
ESPN is the sports. It's the women's side of ESPN. So it's just the women in sports.
That's so funny. I looked it up and I was like, well, surely it's not the sports channel.
I know. I'm as surprised as you. Sports,
okay.
But yes.
So her poems and essays can be found on ESPNW in the pages of Creative Nonfiction, Underwired Magazine, She Walks in Beauty, edited by Caroline Kennedy, Wisace, Small Batch, and Southern Sin. As a performer, Ellen's work has been showcased at the New York International Fringe Festival and the Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival. She is a recipient of the 2013 NOMA Creative Arts Grant and received grants from the Kentucky Foundation for Women, who has supported all of us women in Kentucky. They're incredible.
KFW.
Yeah, and the Kentucky Governor's School for the Arts, which Ellen has taught with over the years, for many years. How many years were you there?
I taught there for 9 years.
Wow. And you went there as a participant, right?
Right.
Yeah. Her national arts residencies include the Hopscotch House and Louisiana Arts Works. She has been on the poetry faculty at West Virginia Wesleyan in their low residency MFA program. And she just received a 2020 New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship, which I'm excited to hear about. She is the director of the Poetry and Theater Department at the DreamYard Project and directs their international poetry exchange program with Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. She co-leads the Alice Hoffman Young Writers Retreat at Adelphi University. A proud Kentucky writer, Ellen is a member of the Appalachian Poets, Conjure Women, and is co-founder of the Girl Story Collective. She lives with her partner and daughters in New York. Are you a Scorpio?
I am a Scorpio.
I know. I always remember that about you.
My husband's a Scorpio. I
Oh,
feel like
dear God.
I
Who's
know, but I
Scorpio?
don't really know that much about astrology, but I do have a funny story that I think you'll appreciate with
Oh, please.
astrology. My freshman year of college at the University of Kentucky, I've been trying to put this in an essay somewhere. I was signed up for all the classes. You know, I was not the most academically gifted in the world.
Yeah,
So I was like, I'm going to take Astronomy 101 because I feel like that's going to be totally easy. Okay. I get to the class, you know, there's 200 people. It's one of those huge lecture halls. Okay. They start to talk about astronomy. And I was like, what? When are they going to talk about, you know, the signs, Aries, Pisces, Scorpio? Where's the astrology class that I thought I signed up for? I mean, and then I dropped it because I was like, oh, wait, stars and the sky is much more complicated than I thought it was. Just totally got out of that class. Anyway, so I don't know much about astrology, mostly because I didn't sign up for that class in college. So I didn't get the information.
my sister's a Scorpio. That's the reason I kind of bow down or crouch in fear of Scorpios.
Yeah.
Like, don't lash out at me.
Scorpios are awesome. They just have
They're
a little,
fierce.
just a tiny sting. But they're fierce. They are
Yeah.
fierce
Yeah.
and intelligent.
Maybe intense,
Yeah.
like a little intense.
Intense. Intense is
Unlike any of us, you're intense.
good. Right.
Did we miss
Michael-
anything in your bio?
No, that was perfect. That was it. Thank you.
That was
I
it.
want to add in, Ellen, that so every year we do a little poll of guest artists with our girls, our participants for the Girl Project, and every year it's always bring Ellen Hagan back, bring Ellen Hagan back. It's so true. We have been so inspired by what you have brought to the table for the Girl Project.
I feel the same way about you all. You know, I think the Girl Project in particular, when I think about going back to Kentucky and thinking about how do you follow the threads of good work that's happening in Kentucky, I always think of you all and what you're building with young girls across the state. And then the idea of gathering them felt so exciting when you all started talking to me about it. So I feel the same exact way. I love what you all are doing.
Well, yeah, and we're talking Girl Story is this last thing I mentioned. Just so you know, I have a trunk in my room where the shirt that I bought at that performance still exists, even though it would fit around like my hand at this point. I was so tiny when I found it. But I do have in here to talk about that because really seeing that show in New York, I think I saw it like when Alicia was going on the Ellen show and getting proposed to, and I came to see your show in that same few months, I feel like. And that performance of those girls, which I'm sure you do all the time with DreamYard, is really what made me say, I have to do that. I have to do something like that. It's like what sparked my interest in how you can talk back to the world, how you can make a difference with just listening to those girls perform was profound for me. Are you still doing Girl Story?
No, Girl Story, Girl Story started in a very organic way that I was working with the Community Word Project. So when I first came to New York, I was getting my MFA in fiction at the New School, but I knew about this program called Community Word Project, which was a training ground for teaching artists. So anybody who, in all art forms. So it was poetry, but also theater artists, visual artists, and we all came together. It was a Saturday training program. So there was an old teachers and writers building in Union Square. Michelle Kotler is the founder of Community Word. And I ended up moving. This is a long story to get here, but I'll get there. I moved to New York City 2 weeks before September 11th happened. I lived downtown on William Street in Lower Manhattan, right blocks from the World Trade Center. And I remember moving to the city. I brought 2 suitcases, moved in a yellow cab. I got my stuff out. I was like, well, that's my whole life here. And I'm coming to the city. I had just, graduated college. I was 22. So I remember thinking I did a study abroad program in London before my senior year. And I knew I wanted to go to New York, but I was like, I can't go to New York and just do the MFA program. I'm going to have to get a job because my parents are only going to help me so much. And I knew about Community Word, and I knew that it was artists in the schools. I wasn't getting an education degree, but I knew I wanted to teach. So I had reached out to Michelle, and I ended up being a part of that. It was one of the first teaching artist trainings. And I say all this because I want to say, I feel like we might have met one Saturday before September 11th happened, but that one Saturday changed everything because I met Lisa Ascalon, Aracelis Girmay, Marina Hope Wilson, which is my, one of my oldest cohorts in New York. And we started teaching together. So through that, and I think also that Community Word was a big reason that I even stayed in New York City. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I should go back to Kentucky. Things shifted so quickly in New York, and the whole city had shifted so much. And also where I lived. I mean, you couldn't go down. There were police and barricades. You had to show proof that you lived in the area. It was a whole intense situation. That organization, all of us meeting together, and we learned how to teach our art form. So we were figuring out, I hadn't taught that much, and I didn't know, I didn't have a lot of training as an educator. So that training changed everything for me. And I got to teach with Lisa Ascalon. That's getting to Girl Story. And we ended up at the school called School of the Future near Gramercy Park, which is one of the greatest schools ever. It's a 6th through 12th grade. In New York, it's broken up. So a lot of times elementary and middle high school, they're broken up, but this was a 6th through 12th grade, had 9 floors, 1 elevator that no one was allowed to use. And so you had to go, we worked with this teacher, Sarah Gill, and Lisa is also one of the most brilliant people I've ever known, ever met. And we got to teach together. We got to follow these kids from 9th grade to 12th grade. And so we were a continuum for those 4 years with them. And we ended up, it was Mauricia Mullings, Chastity Seda, Jasmine Morales, Menica Menon. It was 4 young people that we met as 9th graders who were hilarious and amazing and drove us wild because they were 9th graders at the time. And we sort of created, it was this sort of natural bond of, we were writing about, Lisa and I would be there once a week, by the way. We weren't there 5 days a week. We were there teaching artists generally are in a classroom once a week. So we would be there and we would just be with them for a couple hours, but after we'd be there the whole day with different classes. And by the end of the day, they'd be in the classroom with us and they would just be talking and sharing their life stories. And we'd be talking and we'd be, Lisa and I, Lisa's about 10 years older than me. So, and I was, 20, so we had a 30, a 20, and then all of these 14, 15-year-olds. So we had sort of this intergenerational, and Lisa grew up in New York City. So she also had amazing stories about growing up and the city. And I was coming from Kentucky. So they were like, what are you? Who are you? And they all lived in different boroughs too. And so what they were bringing, and they had different backgrounds and different family situations. So we all brought this kind of, stories about girlhood, stories about growing up. We talked about everything. And so by the time, I don't remember the exact timing, but by the time they were juniors, I think, is when we started to really write together. We said, okay, let's make this a collective. Let's really write together and let's put a show on. Let's put something together. And I think we performed on their stage, the School of the Future stage, a few times. They had a lot, the classes had sharings, but the 6 of us kind of thought, okay, let's do something even more than this. Let's put a play together. And, at that time I had just come out of the theater department. So I was doing solo shows and I loved the idea of a choreo poem. I thought, let's try this out. And so the writing they were doing also was so, it just was so fresh. And each of their voices were so unique that they were so moving to us. And I think we were still teaching them, but the back and forth and dialogue between us was something so special. And anyway, we kept going, we ended up going, we were nominated as Vagina Warriors at Adelphi University, which was a high point. Awesome. We all got, I feel like, vagina pins at some point. I don't know what it was, but we were also writing what felt like radical things. Like we went onto the New Eurekan stage. We did a couple of university gigs. We started to kind of get gigs and events, but there's a sad part of it that they graduated by junior and senior year. They graduated. And I also think, there was a point in Girl Story where I think we were pushing more than they were like, okay, we're about to go to college. We're not, we're not going to be able to get on the performance circuit with you all. This is like, it's might have to have this closing and might have to figure out, we aren't going to be able to last forever, and I remember Lisa and I were like, no, but let's keep, so it had sort of a natural ending, which was them going off to college. And we've seen each other since, I think it was such a unique time in all of our lives. And so it absolutely was one of those things that saved my artist life in New York and kept me wanting to create art. So we have, and all of them I know are still writing, but I think, we couldn't sustain that same model. We tried for a while, and there was a time where they had gone, and we had some other former students, but in fact, I was just talking to Lisa about this the other day, and I said, maybe it just needed to be in that moment in our lives. Like we couldn't keep it going in the same way we wanted to. And maybe that was okay. And that was what it needed to be for that time.
So that's fascinating. I thought that work at that time was with DreamYard. So you weren't even with DreamYard yet.
No. I was with DreamYard maybe 2 years after I moved to the city. And because they were, as a teaching artist, I could have 2 or 3 days of work with one organization, but you really had to be with more than one organization to make a living. Like they didn't always have as much work as you wanted. So you generally, most teaching artists work for 2 or 3 organizations. So DreamYard was after the fact. I mean, we have recreated that model, the idea of students and adults creating together. I think that has been sustained in other ways, but Girl Story was really through Community Word. And in fact, I think some of the Girl Story members are now on the board at Community Word. So they have also stayed in, and many are doing totally different things, going into PR or going into, like, they didn't necessarily stay pursuing writing, but they, I think, are always going to be artists. And I think that's still who they are, and still what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our girls are all over the map. I mean, we have a girl studying chimpanzees, apes in other countries. We have, Rena, who we're going to interview soon, is working on political campaigns. She worked on the Booker campaign. Like, they're just all over the map. Some of them are performing. One of them's an aerialist in California. Just cool stuff.
Yeah. It's very, I think there's that, I don't remember. It's like either you are an artist or you love the arts and you support the arts. It's like all the things that if you had some art as a young person, you might not practice it, but you're continually inspired by it, moved by it, supporting it, loving it, introducing it to other people. So yeah, I think that is still sustains them. Absolutely.
So since we've dropped the name a few times, tell us about DreamYard and the work you do there, since you've been with them since you first started, right? They've been your career in New York.
Yes, absolutely.
Part of your career.
Yeah, no, I've been at DreamYard for almost 2 decades, which is surreal. It feels wild to say it. And there's 3 of us who came on at the same time together. They're still there now. In fact, Mariah Carlson, who just, but this morning before this podcast, David, my husband David, who works at DreamYard too, was doing this. They did a virtual fashion show. Mariah Carlson is a designer, and she leads a fashion class. And so they had this virtual, performance and sharing of all the clothes they're making. But I think about, okay, so DreamYard is a social justice based nonprofit arts and education program. It's also anti-racist. That we are, a race equity. We're thinking about race equity. We are bringing arts to the schools. DreamYard has a school, DreamYard Preparatory School, that is sort of another arm of DreamYard. And we also have a 10,000 square foot space in the Bronx. It's about 20 minutes from Yankee Stadium. And so we house after school programs from kindergarten to beyond there. And I started at DreamYard as a teaching artist. So the same work I was doing at Community Word, I started teaching theater and to elementary school students all across the Bronx. DreamYard is only in the Bronx, but we say Bronx and beyond because we have this international partnership, and they also we're doing a lot of race equity workshops both nationally and internationally as well. So I started as a teaching artist and then moved on to coordinate schools. I now and direct the poetry and theater departments. So I work as a coach and I run professional developments. So I'm training teaching artists and then training Department of Ed classroom teachers and running. We have a poetry slam that happens every year, and we have sharings and events. And right now we're running all kinds of virtual PD offerings. So we have mindful writing and yoga, and we have I keep forgetting. I was saying that, embroidery. I was like, what is? I'm the opposite side of that. I'm not doing embroidery. It's like the Stitch Club. It's Stitch Squad. But we're a bunch of artists. I think at the core of what DreamYard is 40 plus teaching artists who go in schools from kindergarten through 12th grade and bring their art, and they do year-long residencies. So they start in October, end in June.
So some of the kids are coming to the building and some of the teaching artists are going into the school, both?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. We have about around 40 to 50 school partners. That's sort of depending on the year. We might have a few less this year, but we have roughly, that many school partners. And then let's say 100 plus classes across the Bronx. So at any given day, Monday through Friday, our teaching artists are in the schools. They're working in school with partner teachers, or they're doing after school programming. So it's sort of a mix. So in a non-pandemic year, I would be in schools working with the artists, partnering, giving them feedback, coaching. We work with a lot of artists who are seasoned educators and a lot of artists who are amazing artists, and they are just beginning to teach. So they're figuring out who they are in the classroom. So it's training those artists, it's community building, it's gathering. I think of the job essentially as artists who get to spend time together, making work and working with young people and mentoring, and but it's a very and it's gone through lots of changes. We didn't always have, the art center was not always there. So the fact that we have a home in the Bronx now that we haven't been in since the pandemic happened, but people are still there. There's a few people that are still in the art center, but we've transferred all of our programming to be virtual during this time and haven't really left anything out. I think about March 13th happened, the DOE closed schools, and that Monday we were like, okay, so what's our plan? What are we going to do? And so I use that as an example because I think DreamYard is also, it has sustained so many of us as artists. There is healthcare for the artists. There's a place, a lot of the artists are salaried so that you can make a living, and all of the artists are working on their own craft as well. So we always say we're hopeful that you're a theater artist. If they have to do a gig, we have somebody subbing. If they get a TV show, or they get a commercial, or and the same for a visual artist, if they have a show and they need to work on it. We are hopefully a model that sustains that. If you're not actually practicing your art, then how are you a teaching artist? So we want the artists to be actively pursuing their art so that makes them a better educator. And I think we've pushed that for a long time at DreamYard too.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how is DreamYard funded?
So DreamYard is a combination of federal grants and individual donors.
Right.
So it's definitely
donate to DreamYard. Okay.
It's great. A combination of those things, and I can also share after this too a couple of the larger foundations and federal grants that they've received. But it's definitely a combination of those things.
Amazing.
So I assume this work has inspired a lot of your writing for young adult novels.
Definitely. Yeah. So Renee Watson, that's another, and also, I keep shouting it out because I think it was central in me becoming a teaching artist, was that community word training, because I met Renee through that too. So she came on, we had this advanced teaching artist training. So you could come to it if you were already kind of practicing and you already kind of knew what you were doing, but you also didn't know how to get into the New York Department of Ed or the process of getting in. you could do that training. And Renee came on as an advanced teaching artist, and she shadowed Lisa and I at School of the Future. So she came and she watched, and she came to those girl story shows. And so then Renee taught at Community Word. And once I got to DreamYard, everybody also, I was like, come to DreamYard too. I was still at Community Word, and we were all kind of all over the place. And everybody you wanted to work with, you just were like, okay, now come over here for a little while, or bounce in between. So Renee and I taught together for a long time, and then she became the director of professional development, which was my boss at the time at DreamYard. And so we worked together for a long time, and it was through our work together that we really were spent a lot of time in classes and a lot of time with young people, and just like, okay, so let's see what what kind of stories are they bringing to us? Who are we working with? We taught after school, the Bronx Poetry Project, which was housed at DreamYard. We taught together there. And those young people and the work we did with them really inspired Watch Us Rise. So we knew we wanted to create something together. We knew that we cared about, young women's stories. We knew we wanted to create a book about friendship and collectives and collaboratives working together. So that absolutely inspired that. And then the other part is I have a new middle grade, Reckless Glorious Girl. And sorry, hold on. Should I turn the heater off? I feel like it's a little, can you all hear the heater? The heater in the, okay. Probably might clang a little bit, but it might be quiet. New York City apartments.
The charm of New York apartment.
I miss it.
Let me know if I should turn it off. But Reckless Glorious Girl, which is a book that started as sort of a book of questions, because I went to see a 7th grade class that Vincent Toro, who's an amazing artist and poet, he was teaching Pablo Neruda's Book of Questions. And he was asking the 7th graders to ask whatever questions they could think of, and these fantastical and also simple questions. And I remember sitting at a table with 7th graders, and they were like, am I ever going to go to Japan and learn to, learn the language? And then they were like, will I ever get a first kiss? Like, just questions that were like so tender and also fantastical. Will I ever, be a movie star? And I just loved the heart of middle schoolers, and the vulnerability and the sort of the openness. I wanted to capture that in a book of just who is this? Where does a 7th grader's heart, how does it show up? How does it show up, and how do they manage the middle schoolness of, Yeah. So yes, absolutely, it has inspired lots of writing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so sweet. So when we first met, Ellen and I, for listeners who don't know, Ellen and I went to the University of Kentucky together a while ago, and graduated from their BFA theater program. I don't know that I knew you were a writer at that time. Did you know you were a writer at that time? Like, I'm just interested in the evolution of theater moving into this fierce writing career that you've developed, how it evolved, and like the Fringe Festival shows and the Los Angeles Women's Festival shows. And are you still incorporating, spoken word is performance. So, but you're not oftentimes playing character perhaps as much as yourself. I don't know. Tell me how you've evolved as an artist and how it happened.
Yeah. I think I've always been a writer. I think from the time I was in 6th, 7th grade, I kept a journal. So I was somebody who, was all definitely writing about my life and the drama and what was going on and who liked me. And it was often no one. So it was a lot of heartbreak. I wrote a lot of very sad poems, or, and kept it though seriously. And I wrote a lot of poems. And by the time I have a journal from 8th grade is when I think of it as first starting. I had red plaid, I should have gotten it, red plaid cover. And it, like, on the sides of it is like EH plus, that's my initials, plus like whatever boy that I liked, their initials. And then it'd be crossed out because it wouldn't have worked out, or it never happened. And then like the number 4, EVA, Eva, whatever. It was like very, but I was seriously, I was already documenting a lot of things. I mean, I think of that, my writing, as documentation a lot too. It is poetry and fiction, but it's really documenting my life or the life around me, like what is happening around me. And so when I got to my sophomore year of high school, Karen Harriman, who's a poet now too, she was my teacher, and she was fantastic. She introduced us to Toni Morrison and Alice Walker. And she just, the work that she brought to us as 10th graders was amazing. And then when Governor School for the Arts, that was really a turning point for me. I auditioned in theater, and I auditioned in creative writing, and I got in on with both of them. And I remember thinking, you had to choose, right? You had to figure out which one you could go. And Governor School for the Arts is a free program, summer program, the most amazing program, I think, for young people in Kentucky, that is 3 weeks dedicated to art making. So you go there and you just get to make art for 21 days. But I chose writing because I had a pretty great Jim Curry, who your mom knows, who Ellie, because Ellie and I knew each other through the theater circuit. He was my theater teacher, and so I had a pretty amazing theater program at Bardstown High School. So I was already like, well, I'm already kind of doing theater here. Let me go see what writing is going to be like. Let's go see what the writing program. And then Kelly Norman Ellis and Frank X. Walker ended up being my teachers, and then changing the shape of everything too, because they, Kelly especially, has remained my mentor and friend, all these years later, that she just really transformed that class. Those 3 weeks changed everything for me. I remember them saying, after 3 weeks, you're going to know if you want to be a writer, because we're going to write every single day, and we're going to be in it, and we're going to, and so by the end of that 3 weeks, I was like, this is all I want to do. I want to write, but I also want to act. I love acting. I want to be on the stage too, but I definitely want to be writing my own. I don't know that I thought I'm going to be writing my own stuff. I just knew that writing was central to who I was. And I didn't know exactly. So when I went to UK, I was in the theater department, but my minor was in English. So I took poetry classes, and I studied with Nikki Finney and James Baker Hall. Kelly Norman Ellis was there my freshman year, so I took a major Black writers class with her. But I remember, UK. So here's a great UK story. What was the first musical? I feel like you were in it, Ellie.
The Who's Tommy.
The Who's Tommy, which you were in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I auditioned. I was like, this is my big break. I'm gonna make it.
Break.
I love the Who's Tommy.
Yeah, well, so did I. I mean, I thought I was going to love it, but I went with Alicia, and she will remember this. This is when we kind of, we kind of knew each other, but we became friends. We both auditioned. I had been Rizzo in Greece my senior years, my star turn my senior year. Rizzo. Yes. My mom always tells the story. She's like, when you did your solo, one of the solo songs, Look at Me, I'm Sandra D. Like I could not hit the high note. I was like, it was like a Hail Mary to get to that high note. And my mom was like, I was always in the audience, like, please. But she was right. I could not hit that note. I'm not a singer. So I got up on stage so confident because I had been Rizzo, it's like, whatever. So I don't remember who was the accompanist at the time. I had never even been really accompanied on I was not seasoned in musical theater. And so I started, Look at Me, I'm Sandra D, whatever. And I don't remember how I mixed up the words, but I did. So I sang the wrong lyrics, and I was like, oh, excuse me, can you pause? I think I got a little mixed up. So they paused, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Do it again. I messed up the same time. I was like, oh my God. And they were like, what, do you have a memory issue? What's your problem? You're 18. I was mortified. So I got off stage, and I was like, thank you so much. And Alicia, I don't remember how, but she didn't love her audition either. She was like, whatever. But I remember we bonded on the whole walk home. We were in the towers, Kerwin and Blandy. They were like huge 25-story towers. We had to walk 20 minutes back to the towers. And I cried. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. That was the main stage. That was it. That was my time. This is my time to shine. I messed up twice. And I remember that after that, and I think it was our freshman year maybe our sophomore year, that we did the Man Chronicles. I can't remember.
It was sophomore. It had to have been sophomore or spring, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe spring of sophomore. I think it was sophomore. But I remember thinking, okay, I didn't get into that play, but I did I got a very, it wasn't a small role, but I got into, I was Hermione. I was the print, I don't know. It was Shakespeare's
A Winter's Tale.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. A
You're
Winter's
welcome.
Tale. So I got kind of into a main stage, but I remember thinking the Black Box, which I did this play Night Mother by Marcia Norman. Do you remember that play, Ellie?
I remember you doing it. Yeah, of
It
course.
was it's an intense, amazing. I just read it again over the holidays. It's about a daughter and her mom, and the daughter, I played the mother, 18-year-old. I played the older mother, college. But the daughter is telling the mother she's going to kill herself. By the end of the play, she kills herself. I don't mean to spoil that, but you kind of know that before. That's a whole setup. And the daughter it's the most heart-wrenching language. I remember reading that play and thinking, oh my God, if you could do this with language and you could do this with words. And so I think of that as kind of a turning point, because by the time I realized, I might not make it into any of these main stage shows because I can't sing, I can't really follow dance steps. Like, I was not a musical theater trained. And I remember thinking, I like these straight plays that the language is electrifying to me. So that by the time I was a sophomore, we did this play called The Man Chronicles. You could kind of do whatever you wanted in the Black Box Theater at UK. And we took advantage of that. Like, we did all kinds of, I feel like, really interesting.
5 women wearing the same dress. We did Dancing at Lunasa.
Yes.
You all did a lot. Yeah.
So I remember that kind of being like, I just like the creative process. I don't want to wait around for somebody else to tell me, okay, you could do this part. Or I just was like, let's write our own parts and let's just find stuff that feels like we have a home with it. And if they don't let you in the door, you make your own door, and I remember thinking that, and it came from rejection, all of it. I think all my work comes from, the idea of relentlessness, or the idea of, I just want to create art. So I'm going to figure out how to do it. And it's okay if I get rejected from this. It's okay if I get turned down. I'm just going to keep doing it. And I'll tell one more story that I did this summer program at NYU, and it was a 6-week, I loved the program. We got to see all kinds of, I went to go see plays. I lived in New York for the summer. And I remember the professor telling me, she said, I did a scene with writing, and I was writing feverishly in it. And after the scene, she was like, there's something about you when you really talk about writing, or you think about writing, it seems like that might be more of a passion for you. And I mean, I didn't take it, I kind of was like, oh, maybe she doesn't think I should be an actress, but it didn't matter, because by the time I finished my BFA, I remember being like, I don't want to get my MFA in acting. I loved acting, but I didn't want to play parts anymore. I was like, I just want to write the parts. Maybe I'll play parts in the future. I love acting, but I don't know if it's the one thing that keeps me, like, I didn't want to just go audition. I was like, I don't think I can do that. I don't love it enough to do that right now. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the writing came in. And like, okay, we can still, I did a lot of performances, I did different shows, but it wasn't the thing that was driving me at that point.
Yeah.
I'm giving you all the longest answers. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to say enough on this podcast.
No, I love it.
4 hours later, I'm just.
Yeah. And I think we've dropped Alicia's name like 4 times. So let's just go ahead and say Alicia Whitaker Pace.
Yes.
She's written several young adult novels as well. She's who you created the New York Fringe Festival piece with, correct?
Yes. Yeah. We had a show called Becoming Woman.
Yeah.
That we also, all 3 of us, Ellie, have UK in common and Governor's School for the Arts in common. And, I think there's 2 sort of those I feel like, those parts of our lives that were so central, I think, in helping us to become and sustain us as artists. But Alicia and I stayed friends through college, and then created Becoming Woman. I feel like was created just as, this was actually Kentucky Foundation for Women too. We did this a week-long residency at the Hopscotch House, and it was amazing. It was we wrote together. I think we got a Toyota Alumni Fund grant through Governor's School, and I think we were just writing monologues. Alicia was part of that, the Man Chronicles, which was, we were like, it was so anti-man, but we called it the Man Chronicles. I think, and I don't think I'm making this up, we'll have to ask Alicia, but I think I came out in a trunk pretty sure I was in a trunk. It was like a metaphor for me being, I don't remember what it was a metaphor exactly for, but I came out with writing. I danced a lot on stage. I said I was not a dancer. Then I danced my face off on stage. And also, yeah, I think maybe David Cross carried it. I don't remember who carried it onto the stage.
Of course he did.
I come out of the trunk. But anyway, Alicia was there for, I think she was there too for like, let's create anything, let's write, let's create, let's put it on the stage, let's try this out. And then we did Becoming Woman for a long time at Governor's School, and we did it, at high schools and across the state. Yeah.
So you're working with all these young people. First of all, Governor's School for the Arts, absolutely game changer, changed my life. I'm teaching for them now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I know you taught for them for a long time, but I'm in the middle of the adjudication process, watching all these young people send in monologues. And I'm like, how many can I call back? Can we just see them all there? It's beautiful to watch these students sending in their work. It's lovely. Anyway,
That's awesome.
So speaking of all these things that changed us or kind of made us who we are, I know you have 2 young daughters, which is wild to me that you have 2 children and a husband. And your husband you met at Governor's Schools. I remember sitting in a booth in a restaurant with like you, me, Christy, Alicia, and you'd be like, I met this dude. I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Ellen's losing it. And now you're married and you have 2 beautiful children. And his career is really interesting. I'm really fascinated by some of the work you've told me he's doing, but you're raising 2 young daughters. And I asked you to send in a video, or the Girl Project Voices Amplified asked you to send in a video about why we vote. And your 2 girls in that video, like, blew me away. They're so articulate and fierce. So how are you raising these radical young people? How are you raising kids who are smart and anti-racist and really understanding things politically? I feel like nobody talked to me about politics. The first thing I remember about politics is hearing Barack Obama's voice on the TV in the other room and being like, who is that? And like walking into the room, and it's like, then the politics happened for me, right? I started to get invested because I was really, really moved by this person. So how are you raising your girls or these students that you're working with to understand the bigger picture of what's happening around them?
Yeah. I thank you for saying that. I think so. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and so and David and I met at Governor's School of the Arts. Didn't date till a decade later. But I think about David and my connection. Like when we thought about having children, I remember us, David and I could talk about anything, and we were, also both very political by the time we met, and the work we were doing outside. So I remember thinking to him, we're going to raise our kids. I don't know if the word, I guess it could be considered radical to some people, but I remember us thinking, we're going to tell them everything. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to be open about everything. As soon as they start to ask questions, we're not going to hide anything. And we're going to be upfront with what's happening in the world. I think about, I don't know that my parents were super political, but they also respected what I remember talking about feminism at 15, and my mom and dad being like, well, let's go to Barnes and Noble. And they were like, you can pick out any book you want. And I remember, my dad he's a huge reader, and being like, okay, get whatever books you want or read anything you want. And just the freedom to sort of follow my own path of what I cared about, what I wanted to fight about. I remember wanting to model the way my parents gave me a lot of freedom as I was growing up, whether that was good or bad. I had a lot of leeway and a lot of time to make my own mistakes, and to sort of, I could follow what my path was. So I think, and look, I have young kids. I know that. I know they haven't reached middle school or teenage years. So I know I could say one thing and it could hit me a different way 5-10 years from now. But I hope that through what we're reading at home, what we're talking about, what we're watching, they watch all kinds of things. but we always talk about what's happening in the media. If you're not reading the media, who is being highlighted in this show? What do the characters look like? What are the color of their skin? What are they saying? What's their dialogue? What's the text? What are the young people who identify as women? What are they saying? So as we talk about sexism and racism in the media, we're always breaking it down. It's funny because I remember Kelly Norman Ellis, who was raising her daughter Naomi, and I remember watching Kelly. The way she was raising Naomi was so beautiful, and she was always talking about race and sexism and what was happening outside of Naomi. And she was like, "You can do this, but I want you to be able to read what's happening. I want you to be able to talk back to it." And so I remember watching it and being just using it as sort of filing it away, that I never want to be dishonest with them. I want to be straightforward. I want them to follow who they are, but also make their own path, but figure out how they can trust themselves. And I say that because the programs that also they're in right now, they're in a program called People's Theater Project, which is also a social justice based program. My oldest daughter does this weekly program, Girls Leadership, that is also so I thought, it's one thing me saying it, but I like them to hear other adults say the same things that I'm saying too. If they hear other people sort of going, look at, here's where racism shows up in the world, and how can I fight it? And what does being anti-racist look like? What are those actions? How can you be an ally in the world? How do you use your voice to uplift or hold folks up, or be in dialogue and discussion with each other, and listen. I think those are things we've talked about a lot. Those are definitely on the forefront. And I guess also, I don't have all the answers, and I think they know I don't have all the answers. I think there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't know. I'm working through that myself. I'm working through my own identity. My background is, my mom is Italian and Assyrian. My dad's Irish. So my mom, I present as white in the world, but I think, I have mixed race ancestry. My husband's Filipino American. My kids are mixed race, but Sally and Miriam talk a lot about how do they present in the world? What does, so we talk about colorism. We talk about ethnicity and racism, and how the way they present in the world, how that's going to shape who they are and how they interact with other, so I don't think there's ever a point where I'm like, oh, I got it figured out. Okay, these issues of race, class, sex. Okay. I think they see that David and I struggle with it. I think they see that the work we do at DreamYard is grappling with this. We have a learning community there that we talk a lot about race. We center Black women. We center, we really think about how do we center race, and how do we think about who's doing the work at DreamYard, and how do we make sure that is centralized? And so they see all of that happening. They saw it when they would go to DreamYard. They see it here when we're in virtual meetings, and they see us struggle with it. They watch the news with us, and they have questions that I can't answer. David, I think we are always saying we're learning right alongside you. And I think that's what I have to show you all something, because I think this is an indication of also my dad sent this to me this morning. He had just read Stamped, the Ibram X. Kendi book, and he's reading, I'll show you the cover, Mediocre, The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America. Ijeoma Olua, I'm not sure if I'm saying that name correctly, but this is what he sent me this morning. So that's the cover of the book. And then he said, this is my latest read, I'm out there. And so I think about my dad also being like, he's a white man raised in New Haven, Kentucky, a very small town in Kentucky, and he's 71 now. And the way he has also, I just feel like he's the way he's educating and thinking about himself as an older man, I feel proud of and excited by, and like, oh, wow, you can grow older and not grow stale or stiff in your older age. So I think I'm looking at him too as like, look at somebody who's really also unlearning some things and relearning other things. I think as parents, we have to, and mentors, if I'm not learning from my students, especially around sexuality, around gender identities, I don't want to I want to be nimble with those things. I want them, they are teaching me a lot um, about sexuality and about how they present, how gender is presented in the world and how it's a construct. And they're showing me a lot of things that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got to figure this out. And I don't want to be a parent who's like, no, this is the only way. I want to be more flexible. Anyway, that's what I'm. It's a long answer to say, I'm figuring it out along the way, and I think that is a radical.
And it's so, yeah, it's important because I think a lot of people are naive to the fact that, oh, well, he's too young to talk about that, or
right.
We're not ready to talk to the 7-year-old about homosexuality. And it's like, if they can see it, they're ready to talk about it. Cohen, my nephew, knew from the day he was born, because both of his parents have like white blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, very pale skin. And Evan was the only one he saw with this thick, dark beard and dark hair, still white presenting. But Cohen was just wide eyed around him. Like, who are you? And why do you look different than these other people? But if they can see it, and they know this is something different than them, then they're ready to talk about it. And if they're ready to know that a man and woman can love each other, then they need to know that a woman and a man, because that's how things become othered. Like, well, most of my life,
Right.
I knew that men and women were okay. And then later I got to learn that some people do this other thing, like it's uncommon. Or so if they can see it, then they're ready to talk about it, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. And I think a big part of, my family was, my parents were people who had lots of parties. They had people over the house. Everybody was invited. They had events, they had gatherings, they had whatever. So I remember saying to David as I got old, and my first apartment was very, you could sit at the kitchen table, you could open the fridge, cook something and wash your hands at the same time. It was tiny, but we had people over, we had gatherings, we had, I think of, and so I'm in Washington Heights now. And I remember thinking we got a bigger apartment. I was like, oh, this is great, because now we can have bigger parties and we can have bigger. So I think of who we have in our home, and I think of who we have, who we break bread with, who we dance with, who we have for coffee. Or, I mean, of course not right now, but there's still the virtual space. But our friends are from different backgrounds and different experiences and different, they identify in different ways. And so our door has always been open to that too. And so they're friends as well. So I think the way you lead your life also, hopefully as an example to your kids of like, look, I followed what I loved. I followed, and I hustled. I figured it out. Even if I couldn't make money this way, maybe I could make it that way. Or, how you build your life. You hope that is an example to your kids too. That, you want them to do what, to follow what they love, and to follow, and that friendships and gathering and their community is a central part of that too. I always say that if your friends all look like you, then you're not going to be able to have a rich conversation about differences or what the complexities in the world. It's just not going to happen. So I think also figuring out how do you build community? How do you figure out, how do you, build community with the people and the friends around you? So I always think in opening your door and saying, it's okay if I don't know exactly how to entertain that idea. I'm just gonna order some food and you're gonna come over and we're gonna hang out. I think that's a central part of that community building and creating together too. Yeah.
So speaking of all that, and watching you come work with our girls in the Girl Project, you have a really, it's like I can't even see it, but I know it's happening every time you're there. You have a way of aligning yourselves with these young people. And I wonder if there's a teaching philosophy or a philosophy you have as an artist. You talk about using your words and your art to talk back. Like, what do you think the responsibility is as a teacher and a performer and a writer and an artist yourself of talking back and putting art as a central force for advocacy and change in the smaller community and the community in the world with the arts and how bad they're hurting right now? Like, what is our responsibility? What is your philosophy as you come into the classroom and shape and help these young people articulate what they're feeling and seeing and how they're talking back and how they can talk back effectively? You have a
Yeah.
really succinct way of making sure they're talking effectively. Like, there's action in it. And Vanessa and I are always like, oh, we can direct that piece because this is actionable.
Right.
And that's all theater is, right? Is action. So what's your philosophy? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as I've gotten older, it's become more clear to me what I want out of a classroom experience, and there's a couple people I want to shout out. It's Regia Finney-Myers, and I'll say Mariah Carlson again, and then Lisa Green and Natalia Torres, who are a big cohort of who I work with now at DreamYard. So Regia Finney-Myers is the director of professional development, and then the Natalia, Lisa, and myself direct these smaller the departments within that. And I say all their names because we have been working as a cohort for almost 10 years now. That's been my central core of coworkers. And we talk about this a lot, about what do we want in our classrooms to look like. So we're working with the teaching artists, but then working with the young people in the classrooms, and then the Department of Ed, the New York Department of Ed. So the classroom teachers too. And then these workshops are offshoots in different parts of the country and the world. And I've done these workshops also. When I talk about what makes a great workshop, I say the names of those amazing women because they've been part of building it together with, I think that cohort has absolutely built it as a collective. And I think about when you go into classrooms or of any ages, I want to build community, and I want to build it in the most thoughtful and the most caring way possible. So when I go in the room, I want to make sure that the young people, I'm saying young people, but any age, that they have space to say who they are. So, that you don't go in and say, okay, I'm going to tell you everything. That you say, okay, tell me something about yourself. Tell me your name. I want to hear your voice in the space, or I want to see your body move in a way that you feel comfortable in the space. Tell me your pronouns. Tell me something that the song on the playlist of your life. I'm setting up, everything I do is in service of making people feel like their voices are valued and heard. And so by setting up, I'm going to come in, I want everybody to be in a circle all the time. I want to make sure before I even start talking, everybody's had a chance to say something, and then I want to differentiate all my types of teaching. I want to make sure that we do a little writing, that maybe we get to move our bodies, that maybe we do some tableau work, or we do some theater, or we do some storytelling that involves bringing something sacred to you or something special, and you tell that story about it. But everything is, and then I want to make sure I reflect at the end of the class, or I want to make sure that I give time for young people to talk about what worked for them or what didn't. I said the other day it was a safe space, and then I was like, no, it's not safe. It's a brave space, and it could be an uncomfortable space. Actually, you might say something that it's like that. You might say something that hurts somebody's feelings, and we're going to try to, if it does, we're going to try to work through it, and we're going to try to be, our best selves in this space, and we're going to do it by getting to know each other. I often say that as we're dealing with all of these horrible things in the world and these injustices around race and sexism, and I think about, if you could get people in a class together, in a workshop together, the more you start to know people, and the more they reveal about themselves, and the more we can find these connections or these threads that tie us together, that we can start to see our humanity. And then we see, oh, what I said was wrong here. And what I said, I made a mistake here. And I'm not looking at the full picture. Or I'm not seeing you, the humanity in you. So if everything I do is trying to get people to share their humanity. And so when you build a class around storytelling and around, revealing something about yourself and not putting up the walls of, well, this is how I was taught, and that's how I'm always, that's how I'm always going to be. The more you peel that away, I think the more people are like, oh yeah, we do have a connection. And, I tell this story. We were in Okinawa, Japan, and there were kids from Okinawa, and there were kids from Tokyo, there were kids from South Korea and Manila and New York City. And we were all in this classroom together. And some kids, and not everybody spoke English, and not everybody spoke Japanese or Korean or Tagalog, but there were translators there as it went. But I thought, we're just going to try the same way we've done it. We're going to try it because these are teenagers, and I know teenagers, I know they're going to want to tell their own story. They're going to say they don't want to share in the open mic. And then every hand's going to go up and you're going to be like, okay, well, we don't have 5 hours, because it's like, because that teenagers, it's the same thing of 7th graders. They are, they're figuring out who they are. And when you say, tell me who you are, they want to, and then if another kid, we were talking about actually the president, when Trump was here, and the president in the Philippines, Duterte, and the kids came together with this anger about the people who were the leaders of their world. And it was this power, and they were writing, we had like a graffiti wall where they could write in their own languages, and they could draw things, and but it was all the same things I'm talking about. It was all, we're going to sit in a circle. You're going to say your names. We're going to do warm-up games. We're going to be silly together. I'm going to be silly with you. And I'm going to get all the adults in the classroom to get silly too. And we're going to play, and then we're going to get serious, and then we're going to think about it. And how could we have done things different, and how could we shape that? But I've seen it work time and again with all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. So if you do that, if you come in open and vulnerable yourself, and also if you say, I don't have the answers, I don't have them all, I'm going to share what I know, you're going to teach me too, then I really think that it creates the best kind of space to do this kind of work, and through DreamYard too, we're doing a lot of these race equity workshops using art to talk about race. Mm-hmm. Using art to talk about big issues that are out there, because once people start doing a free write, or once people we have this one workshop where they create joyscapes, and they talk about and it's like in a little box, a beautiful little box, and they have crystals and feathers or whatever. And then people start to share their joyscape, and then they start to share the stories of their families and share who they are. And all of a sudden people are crying, and there's also a reflection on, I used to say this when I taught at governor's school. I would say sometimes your families don't always say the most, you love them, but they're complicated, and maybe they don't give you the best advice, or they don't. So it's okay to complicate those relationships and think about yourself, so I think using art as a vehicle to get to that place feels like you can get to the heart of people's humanity through art, no matter if they think of themselves as an artist or not,
Yeah.
Yeah. What is Joyce? What I'm curious about Joyscape. What is that?
It was, so we did this training, actually was at the National Guild for, I don't know the full title of the National Guild for arts organizations, but we did this training around race, and they did free writes, and we did movement and dance. Lisa Green is the dancer. And the Joyscape were these little, there were these tiny boxes, and we thought about what would you build, what kind of, and we had lots of materials. So there were crystals, there were, you could paint or draw in your Joyscape, but it was something that there were quotes, or you could write little words from your free write, but something that you could look at. It would be a space for healing. It would be a space that nurtured you. If you looked at it, it was a space that kind of spoke to you. But using art to get at these larger ideas of where do you need to go in your mind to get to that space that you feel comforted by, that you feel like you can that you can take a risk, that you feel that is, but so that was the joyscape. And I don't have one here. I was trying to look around my desk,
Mm.
but they were so beautiful.
That's cool.
Speaking of the opposite of joy, do you feel like what are you afraid of? Like, is there something in your life that haunts you a little bit that you always find creeping into your writing, like you're still trying to solve as you write? Like, I'm going to keep writing about this thing, I feel like in college you were writing about your mother a lot, and now I'm hearing you talk about your mom and dad. I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew these people, right? But are there things in your life right now, things that are darker that you see creeping in or trying to find a way out of you?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it has to do, I think I'm still grappling with, and I'm 42 now, I'm still grappling with where does my work have an audience? Sometimes I think it's not so much I don't feel like I'm having a whole lot. I mean, it's self-doubt too. Self-doubt absolutely creeps in. I'm working on a novel now, and I was so excited about it and so proud of it. And I'm in the middle to the end. I was like, no, nobody's going to read this. Is anybody going to read it? Is anybody going to, is this even good? Is this trash? Is this what? So I think I'm often dealing with self-doubt and dealing with, I've always said this as an artist, you want fans, not friends. You want friends, have lots of friends, got a lot of friends, but I don't want my friends to be my only fans. You know what I mean? You want your art to be far reaching. And I make art so that people will hopefully love it. And at the core of who I am, I want people to love my work, and I want to be respected, and I want my work to be loved. That's just the total truth of being an artist. And so it's trying to create that and get rid of that. I don't want to be thinking about that, but I am. I think about sharing my story, or who's listening to me tell this story. Why does it matter me telling this story? So I think that's the intense part that I grapple with, and figuring out, like, and some days, and I think some days are better than others. Some days I'm like, I'm good. I have a great community. I'm getting to tell stories. People, I have a wonderful cohort around me. I have artists who are doing it. But I definitely have moments where I want more, or I want, I want there to be a bigger crowd, or to have more and more. And I think that part can be detrimental. I think it can be, an unhealthy relationship to the art. So I'm always trying to figure out, I've been very into meditation, by the way, over the last 140 days, according to my Chopra app on my phone. But it's serious, because I was also, I think I also struggle with anxiety around everything, so the meditation is part of settling my mind too, and clearing my mind, and being like, I don't need to think so much about that. I just need to do the work and not get so in my head about it, and and just figure out, here's the stories I want to tell. Here's the art I want to make. Here's the kind of person I want to be in the world, and not get so caught up in ego. That's the tricky thing for me, is ego. For me, ego, I don't want ego to get in the way, because it can come down on me, and then get me sort of like, oh, is what I'm writing even any good? Is anybody checking for it? So it's not necessarily the art, but it's the product of the art.
Yeah.
That can be tricky for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm constantly like, who wants to listen to Vanessa and I talk to people? But then I hear you talk, and I'm like, oh my, our friends make us.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're getting me wild and inspired. So I'm going to go out of order here, because I just live on the edge. So I have several questions that I still want to ask you, that is kind of like our inspirational. But because we've been talking so much about your work, and I know in your teaching, one of the most inspiring things for the people you're teaching is you read them a few of your own pieces that makes them go, oh, okay. It gets their creative juices flowing. So I want to just skip to our campfire section because we've been talking about your work and your teaching, and then I'll come back to these other questions before we do rapid response. So our audience knows that our audience knows, we don't have an audience.
I love it. Yes, you do.
Our 30 unique listeners currently know that if you've listened before, the campfire is a moment for our guests to share inspiration with our listeners and us, selfishly. It represents storytelling in an intimate setting that is unique to the people who are listening. In our activism work with Voices Amplified, we refer to it as the closed container or circling, similar to the brave space that you're talking about. So what are you sharing with us today?
So I'm going to share a little bit from both books. I was just trying to find. I have the ARC. This is the advanced reader copy. So I don't have the other book just yet. It's Reckless Glorious Girl and Blooming Fiascoes. This is a book of poems, and this is a middle grade novel in verse. So it's a novel told in poems or in verse.
Okay, so Blooming Fiascoes is a book of poems, and Reckless Glorious Girl is
a middle grade novel in verse.
Great. And for anybody listening, we haven't said this yet, ellenhagan.com. Hagan is spelled Hagan. Or you can follow her on Instagram at Ellen Hagan, and you can see all of this information, the cover of these books, how you can pre-order. So whenever you're ready to start sharing, we're ready to listen.
Okay, great. So I'm going to read two poems from Blooming Fiascoes, and I'll read... I knew, and then I kind of changed my mind as we go, but I'm going to read this one. It was written originally about global warming, and then the pandemic happened. I was like, we could be about that too. Although at the end, I'm talking about gathering. Anyway, this is called What Warms You Most. When I stay up past midnight, reading about the globe and its hotness, I do not weep or bellow into the polluted night sky. But do I breathe in that glorious exhaust? Yes. Do I sleep huddled in a kind of terrific fear? Sure. Do I wake again in the morning all the time before the alarm now? Every day, ready, my anxiety close and comfortable. I do say yes. I do not pray, but I do wear a Amazonite around my neck like some prayer or luck, a locket. I do not scare easily, and so I barrel through, ride the train into the nightmare I keep on reading about. Hug the people I love most. Open my home, invite everyone over. Wine and chocolate, and will you sit a spell? And will you dance until you sweat through your underwear? And will you kiss the base of my throat until it opens? A splay of wings riding the shotgun of my love. I will love, 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 love. Love. And then I have a question for you all. Can I read a poem with like a little language?
Yes.
My favorite word is fuck. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've already discussed favorite.
Okay.
favorite
I didn't know. I was
yes.
like, I don't know if I can. I don't know how PG
good.
we are. So we're like PG-13. This feels PG-13 actually.
Or R.
Or R. Okay. All right. So this is a shout out to middle school. I'll read this one and then a couple from the other book. If you've made it through middle school, is what I've been saying lately. You really could give advice to anyone because you've made it in the world. So this is to that kid who said this. And the title of the poem is On Hearing in Middle School That a Pussy Smells Like Fish. How I wish I'd said yes. I'm a saline marinade. We all are. My pussy is an avalanche of salt. Tastes all mermaid-like and alkaline, brine-flavored. I'm savory sodium chloride. Oceanic to the tongue. Relish the zest of my fresh, brackish flesh. I'm all surf water's savory smack. I can sink you with my sapidity, hook and net, bait you with my relished tang. My composition is compulsory, a soluble stimulus that your 7th grade self can't contain. You think you're so cute. With what you imagine to be slant, put down punishment, how you locked our sexuality down with one slight sneering snub. suppression in the form of snide, how even then I imagined it compliment, knowing I'd find someone to long for my pungent delectability. Went to sleep secure that either way, I loved the savorous, scrumptious sea that lived inside of me.
Oh, so good.
Oh my goodness.
These are both from Blooming Fiascoes.
That's from, yeah, those are from Blooming Fiascoes.
Amazing.
Those are from Blooming Fiascoes.
Amazing.
Thank you. That's a fun one to read. Okay, I'll read these next three. They're pretty short, and I'll read them. So Beatrice Miller, it's Reckless Glorious Girl is about Beatrice Miller is a 7th grader. She lives with her mom and her mama in Bardstown, Kentucky, and she is figuring out how to show up her true self and not feel a little embarrassed by her mom and her mama. So I'll read these one after the other. Beatrice Miller's burning questions. Will mom and mama ever see me as more than a little kid? Will they ever trust me, recognize my growing, see my evolution, witness my expansion? I've been studying other words for mature in our big old thesaurus, and they include evolve, develop, blossom, ripen, arrive. So my question is, will those words ever happen to me? How can I celebrate all the parts of me? Comic book nerd, garden and movie lover, bike rider, swim teamer, nacho eater, mama and mom hugger, late night couch cuddler. Should I shine a light on all the parts of me that no one can see? Nervous, anxious, embarrassed, awkward. Maybe if I could share those feelings, then people would see more of the real me. And then will Mariella, Stacey Ann, and I ever be officially cool? Not outskirts, outside, sideline cool, but ruling the school, making all the jokes, getting all the laughs, full lunch table, friends finding us after the bell rings. You know that kind of cool. The kind that's smooth, enters the room before you do. Anyway, I've got about 1 trillion more, but you have to start somewhere. Beatrice. Maybe my parents could have chosen a name not like a granny. Less grandma, more teenage. Less arthritic, more athletic. Less geriatric, more youngish. Less old folks home, more spring break. Less ancient, more modern. You get the idea. The fact that it really is my mama's name doesn't make it any better. Fact is, it makes it worse because I love my mama more than the ocean or French toast or sleeping in or bacon. And when I don't spend all my time hating it, my name becomes a beacon, some light to hang on to when it's too dark to see myself. What other people see versus what I see. To other people, Kentucky equals country, hillbilly, backwoods, uneducated, misunderstood. But to me, Kentucky equals home, family, a garden in bloom, everyone who matters, my whole life story. They see empty roads where I see rolling hills. They see small towns where I see everyone I know and who knows me too. They see small minds where I see big old hearts and brilliance. On the news, I hear poverty and underprivileged, but in my home, I see a table full of fresh food from our garden and beds made with quilts from my great-great-granny's 2 hands. To me, a Kentucky sky is full of stars and shine, smells of woods and fresh earth. Thankful the people who have raised me up have taught me to love where I'm from. Now, I'll stop there.
Good.
Wow. So I saw on your website that, I don't know if it was in a blog post or just shared there, that you have some writing prompts for people.
Yes.
Yeah. I want you to kind of just, I don't know. I know it's creative property, but I know there's ones that you share and that you love to do. If anybody's listening saying, ooh, I'd love to just write after listening to that, do you have a prompt or a starting place or two that you could just give that you love to give?
Yes, and also if listeners are interested, I'm pulling this over here. I have all these I still have 40 left, and I'm going to try to get them out. But these are little Blooming Fiascoes postcards, and I've been sending them to whoever wants one, and with a little prompt on it. So basically, here's what you do: you go around your room or wherever you are. You can go in any book and pull it open to any page. Some of the ones I've used from Blooming Fiascoes are Once I Too Was a Girl, or I Too, in those early days, to raise you. My father, that's a good prompt. I had memorized this. Anything this poem starts with, or what it means to land. You could start it with what it means, what I mean, where I come from, my family, who I am, my heart. I do this mindful writing, and I'm actually going to do one at the end of the month with Louisville Literary Arts, and we're going to write for about an hour. But I do it with DreamYard every week. We have anybody who wants to come. We write for about 25, 30 minutes. I follow this method. I think it's amazing. It's what makes me get through any writing. It's called the Pomodoro method. And you are supposed to, I don't do it always perfectly. You're supposed to write uninterrupted for 25, or do any task, actually. It's not writing necessarily, but do it for 25 minutes. Then you can take a break. And then another 25 minutes. A full one is 25 minutes. And then you can take like a 15-minute break. But it gets you, if you say, you know what, I'm going to write down 5 prompts and I'm going to write for 25 minutes. And once I finish one of those prompts, I'm going to go to the next one. And it could be anything, any word or phrase. I'm looking here because this is all my books in front of me. But and you can watch a TV show and take things they say. You could brainstorm with dialogue. If you're somebody who wants to write, you just got to get to the page. And don't worry about if it's junk or if you don't like it when it's done. You don't have, sometimes you get one line or one phrase that you go back to, and sometimes that's enough, But what I do in those weekly writing sessions, I just pull any book of poems off my shelf and I choose beginnings. And usually they're just one word or 2 words together. So I think even if you don't have to use that beginning, if that's theirs and you feel like I can't use that, then you could just use what comes after. You use the product of that prompt or free write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So this is Reckless Glorious Girl. When is it available?
February 23rd. And Blooming Fiascoes is available Monday.
Monday.
Get that pre-order. Yeah, or order. Yeah, Monday. It comes out Monday.
February.
And I don't know when this comes out, but I'm having a book party on February 19th, a virtual book party that everyone's free and open to everyone. So I would love for,
Oh, so great. Yeah. We need to get that out there. Like when we're putting you out on social media and just say, hey, this is something you can experience before you listen to Ellen. That would be great. Okay.
And then the following February 25th, I have an event with Renee Watson. That's also virtual to celebrate. But she has a new book called Love is a Revolution. And I'll be reading from Reckless Glorious Girl then.
Ooh, love it. Ellen, what is the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given? These are so hard for me, but
I knew these questions were coming. I needed to prep. The greatest advice, I don't know that this was exactly how she said it, but I'll call Kelly Norman Ellis again, and she said to all of us, who in here calls their grandma grandma? And no one was. I mean, I do actually call grandma on the other side grandma, but no, we were all in Kentucky. Everybody's like, no, I don't call grandma grandma. And she was like, if you call your grandma Mama or Mima or Granny or whatever, call it by its name. Follow who you are and your story. So I don't know. Yeah, follow your story. Follow who you are. Stay true to yourself. It was a combination of that, but it was through what do you actually call your grandma? Yeah.
What book do you always recommend to people? Like, do you find yourself coming back to a book that you're always like, start here, or you've got to read this?
Yeah, I always say Sula by Toni Morrison, because it's a book about friendship, and these women are nuanced and complicated, and I love a book where women get to be their full complicated selves. Yeah.
So with all your writing, do you have a book you're reading right now outside of your own work?
I just read, I brought it here so I could share it. I just read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, who I think is a wonderful storyteller. It's told in verse. And then I have this on my bedside all the time. Lucille Clifton, How to Carry Water, edited by Araceli Girmay, who's an amazing friend and inspiration to me. But I go to these poems a lot to figure out how did Lucille Clifton do it? And how did she, she was a mother, she was an artist. How did she do all the things and write all the poems?
I'm excited. I love having new books to go by. I have so many books. What do you think your superpower is, or your unique offering when you come into a room?
I think it is gathering people, bringing people to the same place together.
Interesting. We're drawn to these people. Tanya's life mission is radical hospitality and bringing people together. And that's all she talks about. And this is what you're talking about. And it's such a huge part of what the arts is, like gathering and bringing people together just to hear stories and have people in the same space. I love it. If you could have a billboard on the highways everywhere in our country, what would they say?
I mean, I think it would be, I feel like it would be, I'd say lots of things. I mean, I'd say it would be, come together, community, gather, don't stop. I feel like I would put a lot of words on there. People would be like, I don't really understand the message. Love where you're from, be yourself, dance. Yeah, it would be many things. Not just
maybe
one.
you should have a Valentine heart box that you send out with all your messages on it. Cool. Great. I'm gonna let Vanessa take it from here.
Oh, Ellen, these are rapid response questions.
Oh no.
You've made it. It's the James Lipton rapid response questions. Here we go. Ellen Hagan.
Yes.
What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, fuck, for sure. all day.
If you could try any other profession, what would it be?
I think like maybe, I don't know, sex therapist. I always thought that would be great at that. I don't know.
Seeing how your favorite word is fuck. I mean, I think that works.
And you just read a poem about pussy. I mean,
right.
I know. And also I'm looking at this. I know this is not part of it, but this also is a super, I don't know if anybody's read the Vagina Bible. It's awesome. Anyway.
I have not read the Vagina Bible.
I've read Vagina, but I haven't read the Vagina Bible. Have you read Vagina?
No.
Such a good book. Oh, Ellen, such a good book.
Okay, I want to write it down.
Recommended to me by Dr. Margaret McGladrey, who is the advocacy director of the Girl Project. Sorry, rapid response. Go. Sorry.
If you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be?
Mexico City. The best city. Maybe New York, close second.
Your attitude toward the world in one word.
Relentless.
What would you want said about you after you are gone?
That she loved hard and well.
What was your favorite game or pastime as a child?
A game called Hotels that I played with my best friend Kelly Wheatley endlessly.
Hotels?
I guess board game is what I was thinking, but really we played house all the time and Barbies obsessively. But I thought board game.
Hotels is a board game.
Yes, that's not made anymore. It's really about capitalism. It's not a great board game, but we loved it.
It's Monopoly.
What
is your first thought in the morning?
Well, it's the 5-minute meditation. I gotta say, I get up. I do think about the news. I'm a big doom scroller lately, so I'd be like, I gotta see what's happening in the awful news of the world. But then I stop sometimes and meditate before I look at that. I don't always succeed, but
right there with you.
Yeah.
What 3 people, living or dead, do you want to have dinner with?
The 3 people in my house with me: David, and Miriam, and Sally.
God or no God?
I think it's complicated, but I think no. I think I'm more of a all of us in it together, collective.
Great.
Yeah.
Probably the most important question of all of this today. Choose one: rom-com, documentary, action, or thriller.
I think maybe rom-com documentary.
Oh,
There's so many of
I
those.
don't know, maybe like a documentary with a love story.
with the
I
love
think that
story.
would really
Okay.
satisfy. I don't know.
Okay.
I like real life. I like just watch real problems, real issues, but also love.
Love.
Love you so much.
Oh gosh.
Before
Thank
we,
you, Ellen.
before we wrap up, will you tell us about this fellowship you got in New York?
Yes, this was a big deal. I have to say, it was been one of the biggest career bolsters and pushes. It's the New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship. You know, a lot of I've applied many years. That's why I think about the relentlessness of like, how do you actually be an artist? Well, you just don't stop. You just have to keep at it and not worry about the outcome. Just keep at it. But it's given by a panel of other writers, so that also feels significant. That it was people that I know and look up to and admire the judges, and it's a cash fellowship. It's $7,000. That it's you know, it's not tied to doing anything. It's just in support and value for your art making. And so it's a really significant. It felt very. I found out about it in 2020, and it just felt like, wow, it felt like a point to me that felt very like validating and super was thankful for that the financial gain of it, but also really about just other artists showing love for your work. So yeah, it felt great.
At Ellen Hagan, ELLENHAGAN, or ellenhagan.com. I think I had no idea in college that you and I would be in the sort of relationship we're in. It's so funny. We were just a friend of ours was in an accident, and just getting on the phone with a few people that I hadn't talked to in 15, 20 years. And we were talking like we had been on the phone yesterday. We were like, okay, I love you. Talk to you later, blah, blah, blah. Texting, sending texts, and just the idea that whenever we call or reach out, you're there. And what that means as a friendship and a working relationship. Vanessa and I admire you endlessly. You're always in our conversation when we're talking about Voices Amplified and the Girl Project. Do you think you're staying in New York permanently? Do you have any heartstrings yanking at you from Kentucky?
Yes. Everything you were just saying made me get emotional. Just that, because I think about these sort of long-standing relationships that I have with people from Kentucky or to Kentucky. No, I think I'm always going to try to figure out how to get to Kentucky. During the pandemic, my husband and I bought a house with his parents right next to his parents. You can really, if the four of us stand arm by arm like this, you can touch. They could see in our window when we're having dinner. It really is like a little compound. It's like the Hagan Flores compound.
I love
And it. I don't know. I think we're going to be in Kentucky and part of Kentucky forever. I don't go anywhere without holding Kentucky with me. I don't. Everything I do is in service of figuring out how to hold Kentucky and love it in all of its complications. I mean, I think that's true for wherever you grew up, but I have a special place for Kentucky, for young Kentucky artists. I see the future sitting in that backyard in Kentucky. My coworkers was like, you're going to be leading workshops in the morning with coffee, and then the afternoon with like a little tequila or something. We're all there's a double backyard. We could be doing art installations back there. Maybe there's going to be, who knows? But I 100% think that there's going to be, a tie between Kentucky and New York and beyond. Like, let's just make art.
Kentucky is so special in that way. I lived in New York for 10 years when we were working there together. I've moved around with grad school and Atlanta now, but even my partner, Evan, who's from New York, Manhattan, basically, the first time he was coming to Kentucky, he's like, I really need a pair of sneakers. And should I get a pair before I come? And I was like, well, I mean, or you could get one, you could get them here. And he's like, okay, so you have like a mall in Lexington. I was like, yes, of course. But you think about my brother-in-law is from Junction City. And I remember the first time I was going to visit my sister there with her baby, she's like, take a right at the stop sign. And I'm like, which stop sign? And she's like, the stop sign. So, he wasn't totally wrong, but this idea of Kentucky, and now he thinks of Kentucky as his home,
Yeah.
and New York, but it has a way of drawing you in and falling in love, and the pride that we all take in creating our art in Kentucky. I just love it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say one other thing, that when I think about the most radical of educators I ever had, they were all from Kentucky. I mean, like they were all, and your mom, Trish Clark, who was like, when we would see at these state competitions, the stuff she was doing at Dunbar, all of us were like, oh God, Trish Clark is doing phenomenal. I mean, I just remember being like, oh, I want to work with Ellen's mom too. Like I think of educators, so many of them from Kentucky that were just doing absolutely this kind of radical teaching that was central to how I grew up. So yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, coming from Ohio, which, is only one state up, but there's this whole idea behind Kentucky. And when I moved here, although I do have to admit, I was really upset when I first moved here because there was not a Trader Joe's. There is now. There's a Trader Joe's here now, but I think that magic that you're talking about in Kentucky, I had an opportunity to potentially move after some things went on in my personal life. But I mean, there's just some really amazing things that have happened for me as an artist in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, fierce friend. I would talk to you for another 3 hours if I could. You are fascinating, and you make us look really good. And we appreciate it. We are so excited to share you with the world. We talk about not getting to share our guest artists. We share the work that the guest artists do through our girls, but we don't offer you personally through Voices Amplified. And this is our way to do that. And it's very generous of you to take 2 hours to talk to us. So thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to lots of partnerships and lots of I think you all are doing super innovative, exciting work. So I feel the same, everything you all said about me, I feel the same way about you all. So I look forward to continued work together. I feel like we're just at the beginning of this.
Yeah. And I feel like Margaret's Amped Action is going to be 16 minutes long. You dropped so many amazing names. So stay tuned, and she'll give us all that information again.
Hey, Ampers. It's Margaret McGladry, the Research and Advocacy Director for Voices Amped. Are you as amped as I am after listening to that amazing interview with Ellen Hagan? If you want to take action and get involved with some of the resources for creativity and community that Ellen shared, check out the following. First of her resources that you should check out are New York organizations, Community Word Project at communitywordproject.org, and DreamYard Project at www.dreamyard.com, where you can donate to the important anti-racist and pro-justice work of that organization. She also suggested the following books: Stamped from the Beginning, the encyclopedic volume by Ibram X. Kendi, the classic Sula novel by Toni Morrison, How to Carry Water by Lucille Clifton, and the Vagina Bible by Dr. Jen Gunter. If you want to get your creative juices flowing, Ellen suggested the following book for writing prompts: Pablo Neruda's Book of Questions. Ellen also has some new books coming out herself: Blooming Fiascoes, a book of poetry, and Reckless Glorious Girl, a middle grade novel. Check out all those books at www.ellenhagan.com, ELLENHAGAN.com. Finally, shout out to the Appalachian Poets, a grassroots group of poets of color living in the Appalachian region. Of course, this term was coined by the wonderful Frank X. Walker, and poets and fictions writers identify with the movement include Nikki Finney, Kelly Ellis, and Paul Taylor. Go find their work, read it, support it, signal boost it. We love you, Ampers. See you next time.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, listeners and our guest, for sharing the space with us. If you don't want to miss our next episode and you'd like to follow our work, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Voices Amped. Voices Amped is part of our arts activism initiative, Voices Amplified. Our team is me, Jenny Benavides, Vanessa Becker-Weig, Ellie Clark, Dr. Margaret McGladry, and our intern and editor, Kennedy Johnson. If you have any questions that you'd like to hear from future guests, or if you ever have questions for us, hit us up on social media or email us on our website, voicesamplified.net. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, you can watch all of our interviews on YouTube if you search and subscribe to Voices Amplified. We'd like to thank Lauren Rourke for our podcast art, Tiffany DuPont Novak for our logo design, and Vanessa Davis for her beautiful underscore, I'm Doing Okay. You can follow her music at Songwriter Vanessa. We'll see you next time, everyone.
Voices Amped is generously sponsored by the Kentucky Foundation for Women. For more information about our guests, podcast content, or if you want to learn more about Voices Amplified, follow our advocacy work or support our 2021 Independence Campaign. You can visit our website voicesamplified.net or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. And remember, be curious, be courageous, take up space, and make some noise.